take a look at the test review. Your numbers may be different than mine, but they should be the same types of problems. Okay. So number 1 tells us to write the radical expression using exponents. Okay, so the thing to remember here is that the index, the number out front, is going to be the denominator at the bottom of our fractional exponent we get. Okay, so the cube root of 7 squared, well, our denominator is going to be 3, and then that squared that's on the inside stays on the top. So I didn't write that very well, but our answer here is going to be 7 to the 2/3 power. Okay. Again, because the denominator goes, the index goes in the denominator. Okay. Let me adjust my pen here a little bit, see if that routes a little better. Alright, number 2 says simplify the expression. Assume that y denotes any real number. So here, our index is 7. Okay, so what we're looking for is we're looking for powers of 7 underneath the radical. So the way I like to start these is with the number part. So I'm going to come over here and start with 128 and break it down into primes. Okay, so 128, if we divide that by 2, 2 times 64. 64 is 2 times 32. 32 is 2 times 16. We're going to have a bunch of 2's here. 16 is 2 times 8. 8 is 2 times 4. And 4 is 2 times 2. So how many of these do we have? Well, let's see. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, exactly 7 2's. So we can rewrite 128 as 2 to the 7th power. And then y to the 8th, we can break down as y to the 7th times y to the 1st, or times just y. Okay. So here we have a 2 to the 7th. So the 7th root of 2 to the 7th, that means we can just bring a 2 out front. And then we have a y to the 7th, so the 7th root of y to the 7th is going to give us a y out here. Okay, so our final answer, that we're going to have 2y out front. Okay, and then we're going to have the 7th root of what's left underneath there is just a y. Just a y. So we'll have 2y, 7th root of y. That's how this simplifies. Okay, number 3, let's factor out the common factor. So if I'm looking at this, I'm going to look at the number part first, see if we have anything in common. So we have 2, 8, and 7. So there's not a common factor with 2 and 7, so we don't have a common number that we can factor out. So what about x's? If we look at that, I see that the smallest power of x I have is an x, and they all have an x, at least one. I'm going to factor out an x, and then if I look at the y part, the smallest power of y is just y to the 1st power, so I'm going to factor out a y. And if we do that, we look to see what we have left for inside the parentheses. So to get, let me get this out of the way, to get 2x squared y, we need to multiply by 2x. And then to get negative 8xy squared, we need negative 8 and a y, because xy times negative 8y will give us negative 8xy squared. And then to get 7xy, we would just multiply by 7. Okay, sorry, my pen's not working very good today. I have a new pen tip ordered, so hopefully that will, it's supposed to come Monday, so hopefully that will help us out. And my writing will be a little bit better. Okay, so there's as much as we can factor there. Okay, number 4 says factor the trinomial. So we want factors of 5 that add together and give us 6. That's what we're looking for here. So we do factors of 5. I'm going to move this over to the side. Factors of 5. Well, we've only got 1 and 5. And if we do positive 1, positive 5, we'll get 6. So when we factor, we've got our two sets of parentheses. X times x is what it takes to get x squared. And then for the second part, we want plus 1 and plus 5. Because 1 times 5 is 5, 1 plus 5 is 6. Okay, so we have factored our trinomial. Okay, number 5 says the same thing, factor the trinomial, but this time, take a look at it, we have to work a little harder because our coefficient on our leading term is not a 1, it's a 5. That means we're going to take the first term and the last term and multiply those together, so we're looking for factors of negative 55 x squared that will give us negative 6x. Okay, so let's see. The one I see I'm going to try is 5 and 11. That will 5 times 11 will give us 55. One of these has to be negative. We're trying to get negative 6, so sorry about that, my hand's getting in the way. What about negative 11? So if we do 5 minus 11, we'll get negative 6. And 5 times negative 11 gives us negative 55. Okay. So then the way I do these, and again, if you have a different method, that's fine. As long as you can show your steps and you get to the right answer. Okay. The way I do these is I'm going to take our original, but instead of writing negative 6x in the middle, I'm going to rewrite it as plus 5x and minus 11x. And then I will factor by grouping. Okay, so I see I have a 5x in common in the first group. That leaves us with x plus 1. And I know I'm going to want my second set of parentheses to end up as x plus 1. So the first thing I see I have to do is factor out a negative to change the signs. And then I see that I have an 11 in common. If we factor out negative 11, that will leave us with positive x. And instead of minus 11, it'll be plus 1. And then one more step here is the stuff inside the parentheses, x plus 1, times the stuff left over outside the parentheses, so 5x minus 11. We are finished here. We don't have to solve for anything, it just said factor. So we're not going to set it equal to 0. If you don't have an equal sign in there to start with, you can't just throw an equal sign in there. And so we're finished, we're done factoring. Okay, number 6, I believe. Let's see. Number 6 says find the sum, difference, or product. So here we have a minus sign, so we're finding the difference of these two algebraic expressions, or you could say these two polynomials now. Remember, when we have a minus, the thing to keep in mind is we need to distribute the minus sign. And like we're multiplying through by negative 1. So if we do that, the first part stays the same, 8 minus 3x. And then we'll have minus 11 minus 9x. And then we just want to combine like terms. So here we've got negative 3x, negative 9x. That will give us negative 12x. And then we have positive 8 minus 11. It gives us negative 3. So negative 12x minus 3. That's what we get when we find the difference when we subtract here. Okay. Number 7 is multiply using the FOIL method. Okay, first, outer, inner, last. That's what that stands for, remember. And this one uses T. I don't like using T very often because it's easy to get confused with the plus sign. But you just have to be really careful using your T's. And so here if we do the first terms, 3t times 5t will be 15t. Let's see if I can write that. So I put a curly tail on my t is usually what I do. And then we have 3t times negative 6. So that would be negative 18t. And for the inner terms, we have negative 4 times 5t. So that's negative 20t. And then the last terms, we have negative 4 times negative 6, so that is a positive 24. Two negatives make a positive. We have like terms in the middle to combine. So negative 18 minus 20, we end up with negative 38. I'm sorry, this is squared here. 3t times 5t is 15t squared. I left that off. So negative 38t, and then plus 24. Okay. So yeah, do be careful. Don't make the same mistake I did. Make sure if you do t times t, you get t squared. Okay. Number 8 tells us two important things in the directions. It says find all real solutions, and then it tells us find all real solutions of the equation by factoring. Okay, so it's telling us the best way to solve this one is by factoring. So if we're going to factor, we need to move everything over to one side. So I'm going to move the negative 21 over to, the 21 over to the left. If we do that, it means we're subtracting 21 from both sides. So then it will be equal to 0. And then we are going to factor. This is a trinomial. Okay, so we want factors of negative 21. That will give us negative 4. So you can go through those if you need to. Here I think I'm seeing it. 3 times 7 is 21. I'm trying to get negative 4, so I'm thinking 3 and negative 7. If we check it, 3 times negative 7 is negative 21. 3 minus 7 is negative 4. That'll work. So we want a plus 3 and a minus 7. Okay. Now we are trying to solve for x, so we'll take each one of these factors, those equal to 0, and see what we get for x. They're pretty easy. Okay, we're going to subtract 3 from both sides, so x is negative 3. We're going to add 7 to both sides, so x is positive 7. Okay, those are our two solutions to our equation. Alright. Number 9 just tells us to find all real solutions of the equation. And keep in mind it says real solutions, so if we get complex numbers, those don't count. We don't have to worry about those. It doesn't tell us what method to use, so we're free to choose. So what are our options? I don't know what the best one to work on this is necessarily, so I'm going to have to think through it too. I'm going to think about whether or not we can factor this. Okay, my first choice. So we would need factors of 64, negative 64, that add up to 12. So let's see, 8 times 8. What else doesn't work? What else goes into 64? 16 and 4. Oh, okay, so that one looks promising. And if you're not sure what divides in, you can use your calculator. So let's see, what if we do negative 16 plus 4? And that will give us, negative 12. Okay, so we need to adjust that. So we would need to do positive 16 and negative 4. Alright, 16 minus 4 would be 12. Okay, so that means what I'm going to do is I'm going to factor because I found it. If you don't find the factors, feel free to complete the square or use quadratic formula. That's okay. So we said, what did we say? We said we need positive 16 and negative 4. So 16 times negative 4 will give us negative 64. 16 minus 4 will give us positive 12. So that works. And then we said each factor equal to 0. And solve for x. Once you've done enough of these, you'll probably not have to write out that step. So here we get x equals negative 16. X equals positive 4. Two solutions. If you do quadratic formula instead, so maybe you couldn't find those factors and you did quadratic formula instead, then you should get the same solutions. Okay. I'm going to do one more of these in this part of the video, and then I'll do a part 2 for the rest. Okay, that way it's not such a long video. So here it says find all real solutions again. It doesn't tell us what method to use, but if I look at this one, if I think about factoring, it says find factors of 1. That will give us negative 10. I don't think that's going to work because the only factors of 1 are 1 and 1, and there's no way to get negative 10 out of that. Okay? So think instead we're going to have to do quadratic formula, and I will give you the quadratic formula. You don't have to memorize it. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so if we fill in here, so our b, negative 10. Our a, what's our a? We've got 1 here. And then our c is also 1, so hopefully it won't be too bad. We've got those two 1s, so let's see. The opposite of b, so b was negative 10, so now we're going to have positive 10. Plus or minus negative 10 squared, use parentheses, minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times a. Alright, so let's simplify some here. So 10 plus or minus, and what do we have on here? We have 100 minus 4 over 2. I'm going to scroll this way. Okay. Keep simplifying. Gotta get finished here. So 10 plus or minus the square root of 96 over 2. If I'm you, what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to punch square root of 96 just to make sure that it's not a perfect square. It's not. Okay, you might know that and you wouldn't have to check. But okay, so then what we need to do, we need to kind of go off to the side and we need to see if we can simplify square root of 96. Okay, so I'm going to do 96 divided by 2. It's even, so I know it's going to go in, so that's 48. So it's 2 times 48. 48 is 2 times 24. 24 is 3 times 8. 8 is 2 times 4. Sorry, it's getting a little sloppy down here. I'm running out of room. 4 is 2 times 2. So what do we have? We've got, here's 2 2's. And here are 2 more 2's. What do we have left? We've got 3 times 2. So if we're simplifying our radical here, okay, what do we bring out? We're going to bring out the 2 because of this, and another 2 because of that. So that means we're bringing out a 4. 2 times 2. And then what's left? We've got 2 times 3, so that's square root of 6 over 2. Okay. And I'm going to get our scratch work out of the way just because I want this to be easy to read on the test. Leave your scratch work. Okay? I need to know how you got to where you got to. That helps me give you partial credit. Okay, and then the other thing to notice is we can simplify this a little bit. If we split it into 2 fractions, we've got 10 over 2 plus or minus 4 square root of 6 over 2. Ooh, that was weird. Okay. What happens? 10 over 2 is 5. Okay. And 4 over 2 simplifies to 2. So our solutions here, we've got 5 plus 2 times the square root of 6 and 5 minus 2 times the square root of 6. Okay, you can write it like that. I don't mind on the test. Or you can write the 2 solutions separately. Either way will be okay. Alright, so come back for part 2.